Chris, welcome to Mississippi. Well, you can make it permanent if you want to. We'll take taxpayers in today. Let me take it real quick to give you all an update. I know I'm going to take a point of personal privilege if you don't mind. Talk a little at the auditor shop for you real quick. First term, we finished off with over 95 convictions or guilty pleas of individuals who betrayed our trust. We've got another 65 individuals that are waiting to stand trial. They've already been indicted by grand juries across the state. We've got 262 active cases as of this afternoon. There are 20 investigators who are working on your behalf. And of course, we're auditing every school district, every county, and state agencies, and we're rooting out fraud, waste, and abuse. We've got some great press conferences coming up in the coming weeks, one of which is a concept we're going to start talking a lot more about, and that's the tax gap. How much taxes are owed to the state of Mississippi that have not been paid? Now, that's a big issue. Because of the budget cuts and the budget issues, that's a big press release we're going to be putting out, and we don't have any press here, so I'm going to give y'all, since we've already sort of shared family secrets, $264 million is what's owed to the state that's not being collected. So I was on the phone driving over here with Ed Morgan, our Commissioner of Department of Revenue, and we're addressing that issue together. Hopefully the legislature will take some actions that will help us do that as a state. Now, why you invited me here tonight, actually, let's go ahead and talk about that. I'm kind of in a unique role here in Mississippi, and Chris, let me go back and address. We've had a vote and say so. Matter of fact, my father-in-law still has yet to forgive us in Mississippi for 1976, the last time we had a say so. Because in '76, Mississippi was the deciding vote, and you all know Clark Reed, and we all know Billy Munger. And to this day, they still will not speak to each other. We've tried to get them on stage together for a Republican fundraiser. We said if we could ever get those two men on stage together, everybody would pay to come see. And they still won't do it. All over the '76 fight over Reagan and Ford. And my father-in-law was on the Reagan campaign staff in '76 out of Georgia, and Mississippi cast the votes for Ford. Y'all know who the chairman of the Mississippi Republican Party was that year? Y'all remember a guy named Charles Pickering?
Yeah.
My father-in-law still has not forgiven our family, and I'm just thankful that he, in spite of my uncle's dalliances, I got to marry his daughter. But we've got a history of being very involved, and we've got an opportunity this year for Mississippi to make a difference in that. And the reason that I support Mitt and signed on to that campaign last fall, while I was in the process of my re-elections and others, is because I've had the privilege to meet and work with all three of these candidates. I knew Santorum when he was in the U.S. Senate. If you go to my website and you go to Newt's website, American Solutions, we hosted and I emceed the very first town hall meeting he did for his job summit, if you remember, Scott. We did it at Millsaps. And I worked with him on a couple of other opportunities. Got a picture in my library at home of my son Harrison when he was about 4 years old with the speaker at an ALEC convention, American Legislative Exchange Council. Why did I choose to endorse and support and put my efforts behind Mitt Romney? This election, as conservative as we all are in Mississippi, and about social matters, I'll put my credentials up against anybody in the fight we just went through for Proposition 26 and what everything else we did when I was in the Senate on the constitutional amendment to define marriage. This is not about social issues. This election is about the economy and the protection of our freedoms and our liberty in a government that is growing too large. And I believe that Mitt Romney has the track record, and he has the wherewithal, the knowledge, and experience to help get our economy growing so that Katie Beth, Robert Grady Harrison, and John Thomas, my children, your children, grandchildren, Miss Ava, will have a better and brighter future than we inherited. That's what we all want for our children. I believe that Mitt has the skill set, and this is why. You take a little, get past the sound bites, take a look at his track record. When he was governor of Massachusetts, he inherited a $3 billion budget shortfall. What did he do? He worked to overcome that, and he left left Massachusetts with a $2 billion surplus. He vetoed 800 bills when he was governor. Starts sounding like a little bit like Kirk Fordyce. He's not afraid of a fight. He's willing to stand up. I want a president who's willing to stand up to a Democratic Socialist Congress. Mitt Romney's been willing to do that. He's got a track record of willing to stand up. And so he balanced that. He stood up, he vetoed those bills. That's what we need in a president who's willing to use the veto pen when Congress gets out of line and say, no, enough is enough. I'm hoping and confident that we don't just elect a Republican president, but we elect a Republican Senate and maintain a Republican House. And let's get this nation back on track. But when it talks about getting things back on track, we've all heard about the Olympics and what Mitt has done to move the Olympics, which are failing, back on track. Take a look at what he did in the private sector. His company, which a lot has been made about in the news, Investment Banker and Capital, which is what our country's been based upon. Companies like Domino's would not be in business today had it for his work in investment structures. Staples would not be in business today if it hadn't been for what Mitt Romney did with his company and his investors and others to help them restructure and organize. And you can go down the litany of the list of companies and organizations that they help make a difference in. So this is a man who financially, fiscally, understands what it takes to create jobs and create an economy. That's what we need in the White House. Let's talk about the values issue, because the issue comes up in Mormon. And everybody knows that I serve as a chaplain in the International Guard, and as an ordained Baptist minister, how can you support a Mormon? Very simple. Well, our closest ally in the world is Israel. And I don't think one of us in here would say that we share a common faith. We share a common rootedness, but we don't have the same faith for the most part. I may not have the same faith as Mitt Romney, but what I do have are shared moral values, shared convictions. He's been married to the same woman for 42 years, 5 kids, and they are faithful in their faith and in the practice of their faith. I'm tired of politicians behaving badly, and I want a president who will share and live out the same values that I try to teach my children, that we try to live out in our home. We may not agree on every tidbit and tittle, but what we do agree on are the values that we want this nation to live by and that we want to pass on to the next generation. I believe Mitt is the most electable candidate that we have. I believe that from the very beginning. As Scott said, any Republican, any of these 3 that you've heard from tonight will be better than who we have. But I'm confident at the end of the day, when we head to Tampa in August for the Republican National Convention, it'll be the Mitt Romney Convention nomination that will be taking place. I look for all of us to come alongside one another to make a difference. That's the reason almost all of our statewide elected officials, our district officials, have all endorsed the Romney campaign. Because we're confident the difference in the leadership he can bring to the table for the future of our country and the future for these kids. So thank y'all so much. I'll take 1 or 2 quick questions. And I got to go back to Laurel tonight. We had a funeral in the morning. Great Uncle Ike, I was talking earlier, 94 years old, lived life to the fullest. So it'll be a celebration. But Jim and I've got to drive for a little bit tonight. So if y'all excuse me, we're going to step out. But I did want to make sure if you've got any questions, I'll be glad to answer. Mitt was here in November. We're looking forward to getting back in the state and making an impact. So Mississippi is in play. This is the first time we've seen presidential campaign ads on TV in many, many years during the primary season. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank y'all so much.